All praises. All praises. So shalom, y'all. Yeah. Hope everything is well this week. Continuing with Parsha Vayetze. And yeah, we'll probably actually be finishing this particular Parsha. I thought we would be in it for a little bit longer, but the father's like, nope, we're gonna move at this pace. So we should be finishing off this Parsha today. But yeah, without further ado, hopefully everybody will be edified by it.
Yeah, that's what I said. I know. Shalo was asking, have we started yet?
All praises. So sorry about that, guys. Having some technical difficulties, but I believe we are live and ready to roll now. Okay. All praises. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started in Parsha Vayetze. Wrapping it up today, Genesis 28:10 through 32, verse 3. Haftarah portion is Hosea 12:13 through 14, verse 10. And then the Brit Kadashah portion was John 1:19 through 51. Okay. So keep in mind, pretty much where we are right at this particular point in time. Like, keep in mind where Jacob is in his life at this moment. This will start a new path of learning for him. Uh, Basically, he's going to be learning how to walk with Elohim. So he's leaving from one place and transitioning to another. He will have to adjust to the new culture and the new ways of life. So as we proceed through the lesson, we will see how this new landscape will show him how he himself will have to become new as a person. All right. So in essence, he's not only going into a new environment and into a new situation, a new place in his life. You also see where not only is he leaving from the old place, but he's got to leave his old self, going to a new place, and he's got to become new. All right, so Genesis 29, verse 1, it says, Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. All right, so this could literally be translated as he lifted his foot. All right, so is there any reason that we are given this illustration of Jacob lifting his foot to travel on this journey to the house of his fathers? Right, so literally, like, usually when you'll see, like, when someone goes out, a lot of times it'll be the word halach. So it'll be like, and that can be translated as he went as well, or he went to a place. But in this particular uh sentence, they the it's worded as he lifted his foot. So the word there, both that whole little phrase there are those two Hebrew words there on the side. So H5375 Nasa, which means to lift in a great variety of applications, literally and figuratively, absolutely and relatively, to accept, to advance, to arise, to be able to armor or suffer to bear, like to as an armor bearer, to bring forth, to carry away, fetch, extol, to exalt, to forgive, to go on. So we see the definition there, right? There's I'll get into it here in a moment. Next word, there's the word regel, which is the word for a foot, as used in walking, by implication a step, by euphemism the pudenda, be able to endure according to or according as after, um, coming to follow, right? We get it, right? Mainly, we want to look at is literally your foot, and then by analogy is your ability to endure, meaning how far can you walk, and then nasa, which is to lift up, but it's not just lifting up as like, oh, I lifted something in the air, but it kind of implies lifting something up and holding it, carrying a burden. We get it, right? So remember the meaning of Jacob's name. It's a heel catcher, right? So could this be a picture of him lifting his foot versus his usual grabbing of someone else's foot, right? So you're gonna start to see that there's gonna be a flip in kind of how this particular part of his journey is gonna go. Leading up to this point, he's been the one that's been being a snare to others. Now we're gonna see it kind of be reversed on him. All right, so also notice that a part of this journey is going to be about him learning how to endure and how to bear the consequences of his actions. So in this, he will learn how to accept what he has done and its results. But in this, he will also learn how to forgive, specifically in this case himself, so that he can move on forward on his journey. Right. So he's lifting his foot on this journey, and like they had a saying, like it's just one step at a time. Like, only way to walk is to put one foot before the other. And that's what you're gonna start seeing with him in this walk with Elohim. All right, so we see the same word nasa being used in a variety of ways in the scriptures. So here are a few examples of how it is used to indicate that one must bear the consequences or come to accept the effect of something they cause. If one cannot accept it, however, it may accept their ability to move on, right? So all of these things are in the definition, right? To go on, to be able to move on, to accept, to forgive, to bear, right? All of these things are in that definition. And you can see how if you are not able to bear the burden for your own actions, how that might prevent you from being able to go on in your journey, right?
Absolutely.
Come on.
So, all right. So Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, it says, and Yahuwah said to Cain or Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's guard? Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer in the earth. And Cain said to Yahuwah, my punishment is too great to bear. That word for bear is nasa, right? So he says, see, you have driven me from the face of the ground today, and I am hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and it shall be that anyone who finds me kills me. So in this case, we see that Cain was not willing to bear the burden of his own actions, but instead complained that the mercy he had been given was still too heavy a consequence for his actions, right? So instead of him walking with it and bearing it, and then perhaps you got an opportunity to receive some mercy on top of this mercy that you've already been given, that you might be able to continue and move on in your journey. But staying centered in on that moment, all that he can see is, instead of seeing the mercy that he's been given and the fact that, well, when I come across somebody, they might want to kill me, I have an opportunity to come across somebody that they might want to kill me. Because really and truly, for what I've done, blood is required. The one I'm talking to should be putting me out right now. But he doesn't see it that way because he's so caught up in this moment and caught up in self that he's not willing to bear his own burden for it and the own consequences for what he put in the game. And then, now he's stuck. He can't move on. All right, so this word nasa is used to indicate that one is carrying or bearing a burden. It paints the picture that something is being held up or lifted up by something else. All right, so we all know it, NASA. Now, I wonder if this is just a coincidence that they named it NASA, or did they find an acronym to, you know what I mean, to describe what it is. I just don't know if this is a coincidence, but to lift up to, okay. But easy way to remember this, right? So Genesis 7:17, it says, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bore up, or nasa, the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. All right, so Exodus 19, verse 3, it says, and Moses went up unto Elohim, and Yahuwah called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you have seen what I did unto Egypt, and how I bore you up, or nasa, you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Excuse me. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and guard my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and a set apart nation, or holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel. Very interesting right there, that not only is he going to lift us up and bear us on his wings, but he's also going to lift us up above all of the nations if we do what we're supposed to do. So that's real interesting, to just keep that in mind, that concept in mind, because we're going to see how when you humble yourself under the Father, how that opens up the door for the opportunity for him to exalt you in due time, to raise you up in due time. So Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1, it says, and if a soul sin and hear the voice of swearing, and is a witness whether he has seen or known of it, If he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Right. So Leviticus 22, verse 9, kind of in the same light, it says, they shall therefore guard my ordinance, lest they bear sin for it and die therefore, if they profane it. I, Yahuwah, do sanctify them. So in this case, sin, transgression, or iniquity is something that one can bear, right? Sometimes the burden is not always a physical weight, but it can be spiritual. All right, so some new beginnings. So Genesis 29, verse 1, it says, and Jacob moved on and came to the land of the people of the east. So notice here, he is now coming into a land with a people group that are distinctly different from what he is familiar with. Here, these people, being the people of the east, um, have different customs and ways that they do things. So keep this in mind as this lesson continues, because this will be an underlying theme as the story starts. So Genesis 29, verse 2, it says, and he looked and saw a well in the field, and saw 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a large stone was on the well's mouth. And all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. So Jacob said to them, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. And he said to them, do you know Laban, son of Nahor? And they said, we know him. So he said to them, is he well? And they said, well. And see, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. And he said, see, it is still high day, not the time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them. But they said, we are not allowed until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we shall water the sheep. So notice, we already see a difference of how things are done here, right? Where Jacob is from, things are apparently done differently. They separate the herd from the flock, right? He's saying, hey, no, the bigger animals, the livestock, it's not their time to drink. But what are we waiting on? Why y'all just sitting here not watering the flock? But they know, now we got to wait for everybody to get here before we water the flocks. And then we all water at the same time. So he knows that the herds are given drink later in the day, but here they wait until everyone is present at the same time before water is given to all the flocks. Here, the shepherds are not allowed to only be concerned with themselves and their own flocks, but they must be considerate of everyone else's flocks as well. This was a rule that seems to have been put in place to ensure fairness, so that not one flock drank more water than their portion. We see that this thought is not something that Jacob has thought of, and it seems odd to him that the men are waiting there with flocks and they are not drinking. Now, there may be several reasons that this is not an issue where he is from. There may be a better standard of hospitality where everyone trusts that no one would abuse a shared well. Or perhaps it is because the wells he used back home were only used by his house, so sharing the well isn't even something that comes to his mind. Remember, in the previous Parsha, we saw his father's struggles over wells and his latter gaining of wells that he did not have to quarrel over, right? So remember when Isaac, every well he was going to, he was fighting with the people of the land over this water, and then he finally came across a well where he didn't have to fight over that anymore, and he rejoiced, right? So is this part of Jacob's upbringing where Jacob is like unfamiliar with this whole standard of having to share the wells because this is not something that they do? He's found a well that he doesn't have to quarrel over. This is all they use this well. This is our well. No one else uses it. So the key thing to notice here is that there is definitely a difference in the way that things are done, and Jacob will have to make some adjustments, right? So Genesis 29, verse 9, it says, while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to be when Jacob saw Rachel and the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up, Nasa, same word, his voice and wept. So the question is, what burden do you think Jacob is carrying? Right? So now you're seeing him lifting up his voice, and it's just this outpour of emotion, right? So it's some emotional things that's going on behind the scenes, internally, some things that he's going through, some burdens that he's carrying. And we're getting a glimpse of it here. It says, and when Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rivka's son, she ran and told her father. And it came to be when Laban heard the report about Jacob's sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he told Laban all these matters. So now we're going to perhaps get a glimpse on why there's this outcry, this crying out, this overflow of emotion. And Laban said to him, you are indeed my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a new moon or for a month, a Chodesh. So notice the similarities between Jacob and his mother with his providing water for Laban's flocks, right? Also notice the similarities Laban sees between himself and his nephew Jacob. When Jacob tells Laban the story of what he did and why he is now there, his response was, you are indeed my bone and my flesh, indicating that they were two of the same. There was something about Jacob deceiving his brother that felt just like home to him. This tells us something about his character. This also ties us to a clue of what may be about to transpire in the story. In other words, how Laban is going to interact with him. If we can recall, we saw this phrase in an earlier Parsha when the woman was created, right? This bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. We saw that in Genesis 22 or 2 verse 22. It says, in a rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, for they shall become one flesh. Real interesting, because what is Jacob doing now? He's leaving the house of his father and his mother to be joined to a wife. So interesting pictures here on the side. And it's kind of like the tone of what this lesson is about, right? So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? We've all heard it. But in this case, it's something positive, right? With the picture at the top, is the mother is doing the laundry. Then you see the daughter learning of her mother's ways, right? And then they just said family relationships because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So we don't see some ways, possibly some origins of what is the root of some of this stuff that Jacob has been dealing with and some of his ways. Where did this come from? Is this just pop out of thin air, or did this come from perhaps something that was in the family tree? But then you got this little picture here at the bottom, this little comic here at the bottom, and you see it's like fall time, it's autumn. You see the tree, and snap, an apple drops, and you see the apple crying, the little baby apple crying. His tear on his face makes me laugh. And I'm saying, help me, I fell. And then you see the parent tree saying, you need to fall to grow. And then not too many years later, after the little apple that fell matures, it's done growing into a tree just as big as the parent tree and just as fruitful as the parent tree, right? So that's kind of the tone of what the lesson is about. This is a process that we're seeing Jacob go through, and it's something for us to take as well, right? This temporary moment, this snapshot seems like a down moment, right? It seems like I failed, right? But if you do the things that you need to do and you fall on good ground, this right, this apple has seed in it, and that's what's going to become the tree, right? If some seed falls on good ground and it gets the proper things that it needs, water, sunlight, right? We know what the light is, we know what the water is, we know what the ground is, we know what the seed is. All of it has been laid out in scripture. With all of those things working the right way, the Father can provide the increase if you will humble yourself to what He's doing in you, that you will, after a passing of time and all of these events come to pass, you'll be just as strong and fruitful. Right? So, real interesting. All right. So, Genesis 29:14, it says, and Laban said to him, you are indeed my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a new moon or for a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Let me know, what should your wages be? Excuse me. And he says, or I said, now we know how Laban treated Jacob over the years. This is something to pay attention to. So this is just a side note, right? Notice that Laban had a span of time to observe Jacob. Jacob sat in his house for a month. Also, keep in mind that Jacob burst into tears when he saw Rachel. It does not seem hard to tell that he is walking with a burden because of his actions. It is possible that Laban sees this and sees how he may be able to take advantage of him. If he sees that he is in a vulnerable state, is this something that can be exploited? With that being said, you can see why you must be careful where you place your burdens, right? So we see that Jacob is in a particular place, right? And it's a word to the wise that, yeah, this is a whole part of the process. And in order for you to be exalted, you got to humble yourself, but you got to be real careful of where you cast your pearls. You got to be real careful of what situation you allow yourself to be in, because you are in a vulnerable state. And because of that, somebody that's not for your toe can take advantage of you. So just something to keep in mind. That's a side note, right? Then Matthew 11, verse 28 says, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I shall give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble in heart, and you shall find rest for your being. For my yoke is gentle and my burden is light. All right. So keep in mind that we were laden with iniquity as a people, right? As a on a corporate level, us as a people and us as a people as a whole, sometimes the trick for us is putting our hope, putting our eggs in the wrong basket. Then it ends up being that we get sidetracked, and instead of us turning to the Father, which is where we need to be in order to get out of this situation, we put it in other things, whether it be whatever new little movement, BLM, whatever little movement it is, civil rights movement, whatever movement that it is that comes up, and then it ends up being a trick bag for us because we still haven't humbled ourselves to where we need to be putting our we haven't put ourselves under the yoke where we need to be, right? So like I said, keep in mind that we were laden with iniquity as a people. Because of slavery to iniquity, we became physical slaves. In carrying the burden for our sin, we seek rest. If we learn the ways of Mashiach, we can receive rest. Notice here that the ticket to getting help with your burdens or the weight of the actions of your past is in becoming meek and humble in heart, right? That's what Mashiach said. Learn from me. I'm meek and I'm humble in heart, right? And this is the thing that causes us to be basically get the burden lifted. And Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4, it says, alas, sinning nation, a people loaded with crookedness, a seed of evildoers, sons acting corruptly. They have forsaken Yahuwah. They have provoked the set apart one of Israel. They went backward. Right. So we know where our burden comes from, and why we're dealing with the things that we're dealing with today is because it's something about meekness and humility to our Alua that we did not do. Right. So now we got to carry the burden for our actions. And if we don't accept it, We know that there's a pattern of cursings and all sorts of other things, but if we accept it and we turn from our wicked ways, then there's hope. We can be exalted and restored. All praises. So,
For whatever reason, my glasses didn't show. Could you do me a favor and go back 2 slides? It just came up now. Could you go back to the previous one,
mhm.
right quick, and let it sit for a moment just to see if that. So we're at new beginnings.
So this slide.
Yeah. So I see new beginnings.
Okay, all
And if we
praises.
could let that chill for just a few moments in that way, because while you were talking, I'm trying to figure out, okay, why isn't it showing? It's showing now.
All
This is the
praises.
one where you were talking about how God said to him, you'll be bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And so now he's probably seeing something that reminds him of home in Jacob.
Hmm.
Okay. And then also the one about the tree, because that's where we were getting some comments at that they couldn't see the little
So
tree guy.
this one.
Yes.
All praises.
Let's see if that one jumps on. Quick. Apparently, there's some lag time with this, so we gotta give it a moment. Oh, shoot, that's the Bible.
See that? See that?
Yeah, for whatever reason, I think it's just like really slow. I'm not sure why. Technology ain't smart. Oh, excuse me. So that one's still just having some difficulty coming up, but yeah, just go ahead and hopefully the rest of the slides will play.
All praises. I think we were here, right?
Yeah. I don't know why it does not like your little tree slide.
Whoa.
The other ones popped up, but it does not like your tree.
Huh. All praises.
But that's all right. What we'll do, if you will, what we'll try to do is I'll get it up there some other kind of way to make sure that's
Hmm.
one of the ones that we can see a different.
Hmm. All praises. So, sowing and reaping. So Genesis 29, verse 15, it says, Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Let me know, what should your wages be? And Laban had two daughters, and the name of the elder was Leah or Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, Rachel's Rachel was beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. And Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, Let me serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Boy, that's some serious love. Then Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are completed, and let me go in to her. And Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to be in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob. And he went in to her. And Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a female servant. So here's something from Jasher, and it paints it just some of the details in right of how was this able to happen, and it's a little bit funny, but it kind of ties it together of what's actually taking place with Jacob, and perhaps this is some sowing and reaping.
Mm.
All right, so verse 1 it says, this is Jasher 31, starting at verse 1. It says, And in the 7th year, Jacob's service, which he served Laban, was completed. And Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for the days of my service are fulfilled. And Laban did so. And Laban and Jacob assembled all the people of that place, and they made a feast. And in the evening, Laban came to the house, And afterward, Jacob came there with the people of the feast, and Laban extinguished all the lights that were in the house. So there's some darkness going on. And Jacob said unto Laban, where dost thou do this thing unto us? And Laban answered, such is our custom to act in this land. And afterward, Laban took his daughter Leah, and he brought her to Jacob. And he came to her, and Jacob did not know that she was Leah. And Laban gave his daughter Leah, his maid Zilpah for a handmaid. And all the people of the feast knew what Laban had done to Jacob, but they did not tell the thing to Jacob. And all the neighbors came that night to Jacob's house, and they ate and drank and rejoiced, and played before Leah upon timbrels and with dances. And they responded before Jacob, Heleah, Heleah. And Jacob heard their words, but he did not understand their meaning. But he thought such might be their custom in this land. So Laban set it up real good, didn't he? He's doing all kinds of things I ain't seen before. It says, and Jacob heard their words, but did not understand their meaning. But he thought such might be their custom in this land. And the neighbors spoke these words before Jacob during the night, and all the lights that were in the house Laban had that night extinguished. And in the morning, when daylight appeared, Jacob turned to his wife, and he saw, and behold, it was Leah that had been laying in his bosom. And Jacob said, behold, now I know what the neighbors said last night. Heleah. They said, and I knew it not. Now, one of the things that's funny about that, it's a combination of the two Hebrew words. He in Hebrew is she. So in Hebrew, who is he and he is she. But yeah, so he is the word for she in Hebrew, and they combined it with Leah, and here we are. But he didn't understand it, thinking that this is a new custom, and they making a mockery of it. Something about these people of the East. So it says, and Jacob called unto Laban and said unto him, what is this you have done to me? Surely I served you for Rachel. And why did thou deceive me and did give me Leah? And Laban answered Jacob, saying, not so is it done in our place to give the younger before the elder. Now therefore, if you desire to take her sister likewise, take her unto thee for the service which you will serve me for another 7 years. And Jacob did so. And he also took Rachel for a wife, and he served Laban 7 years more. And Jacob also came to Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. And Laban gave her his maid Bilhah for a handmaid. And then again, we get just a little bit more details with Jubilees. This is Jubilees 28, 1 through 5. It says, and he went on his journey and came to the land of the east to Laban, the brother of Rebekah, and he was with him, and he served him for Rachel, his daughter, 1 week. And in the first year of the 3rd week, he said unto him, give me my wife, for whom I have served thee 7 years. And Laban said unto Jacob, I will give thee thy wife. And Laban made a feast and took Leah his daughter and gave her to Jacob as a wife, and gave her Zilpah his handmaid for a handmaid. And Jacob did not know, for he thought that she was Rachel. And he went in unto her, and behold, she was Leah. And Jacob was angry with Laban, and said unto him, why have you dealt thus with me? Did I not serve you for Rachel and not for Leah? Why have you wronged me? Take your daughter, and I will go. So this is the state where he's at. Nah, this is a deal no good. Take your daughter, and I'm gonna be out of here. for you have done evil to me. For Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, for Leah's eyes were weak, but her form was very handsome. But Rachel had beautiful eyes and a beautiful and very handsome form. So then we see it again going back to Genesis 29:25. It says, and in the morning it came to be that see, it was Leah. So he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? And then keep in mind the cycle that we saw in the garden. Aren't these the same words that Eve said? Right? This is what the Most High said to Eve, right? What is this you have done? And then her response was, the serpent deceived me. So could it be that Laban is getting painted in the picture of the serpent? Yeah, we'll just leave that there. But Genesis 29:26, it says, and Laban said, it is not done this way in our place to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one. Then we give you this one too, for the service which you shall serve me with still another 7 years. And Jacob did so and completed her week. Then he gave him his daughter Rachel too as wife. And Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a female servant. And he also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban still another 7 years. All right, so notice how this is an example of Jacob reaping what he sowed. This was the result of his own actions coming back upon his own head. So how was Jacob able to deceive his father? Right? He was able to deceive his father because his father couldn't see. And now you see, and then just a question, wasn't it also because his father's eyes were weak? And then what was Leah regarded as? One having weak eyes, she couldn't see too well. Now we see this coming back to his face, and now he is being deceived by one who has weak eyes.
I was thinking about this as well. It seems like just all in this interaction with him and his uncle getting his wives, he getting paid back double. Because it is not so for them to give the older before to give the younger before the older. And his older brother had his older brother have done what his mother wanted him to do as far as getting a wife. Had he not gone to the strangers and gotten wives, he would have gone back to her people as well. And Leah might have been his. But he purchased that birthright from his brother.
That's a major key.
And so now you get your double portion. You got your double portion.
That's
you getting
on.
paid back exactly what you asked for. What is it going to bring now?
All praises. That's spot on. So he was taken advantage of because he was not able to see, just as he did Isaac. He is deceived, and the eldest is given the blessing, birthright, versus what he did, being the younger under his brother Esau, right? So just like what Sis was going into, but that's a whole nother level of it. Rachel would have been yours. Wow. Then notice what Laban said. This is a very subtle reminder that this is being done to him because of what he did to his father. Could this be Elohim's way of reproving Jacob through Laban? Right? So one thing to keep in mind, sometimes when we are in that place of being low and having to humble ourselves, right? We're in a place of affliction. Sometimes it's a case of it ain't just this person being an adversary. They're set as an adversary against you because there's a lesson for you to learn in this, to humble yourself to Elohim. And some of it is just reaping and sowing, right? All praises. All right, so learning meekness and humility to receive rest. So overall, what does reaping and sowing look like, and how does humility or pride affect the process?
It's a loaded question. One more time. Up top.
So overall, what does reaping and sowing look like, and how does humility or pride affect this process? So what does it look like when you're reaping, or when you're reaping something that you sowed,
Mm.
and then because it's one of those things that you kind of gotta be able to identify, because sometimes it is, no, this is just an adversary or an enemy. Let me move this way. Some things I don't have to accept, and this is not part of the Father's plan. If I leave it up to you, you'll just have your way, XYZ. But then part of it, more often than not, right? I would even venture to say that that's the rarity. More often than not, especially if you're in the Father's hands, it's some reaping and sowing is going on, or there's a lesson, a greater lesson for you to learn, right? So, what does that look like? One, and then how does humility or pride, how is that going to affect how you make it through that process? Because if you don't see it for what it is, because you're operating in either humility or pride, you might not be able to make it through that process.
Could you do me a favor and go back to that previous slide?
Mhm.
Because it's stuck on sewing and reaching right quick. So maybe it'll jump. So let's try to advance. Yep, there we go.
All praises. All praises. So yeah.
And
And also, if anybody in the chat wanted to put their answers as well, we will do our best to read those out loud. So the question is, overall, what does reaping and sowing look like, and how does humility or pride affect that process? Does anybody? I'll toss something out there. I
All
think it
praises.
just on a surface level, to me, what I think that reaping and sowing looks like, it really looks unfair for the person in it,
Mm,
because you'll be blinded by your own actions a lot of time. And I think it's that pride that will help blind
mm.
the
There we
act
go.
your own actions. So it could look absolutely like you getting taken advantage. Oh, this is unfair. This is, I shouldn't be dealing with this. But really, should you? Did you
Mm,
dish this out in some kind of way? And my ish says it all the time. Like, you reap what you sow, yes. But the other part of that is you do not get to pick how it
mm.
comes back to you.
Mhm.
And we tell the children this all the time. You treat people how you want to be treated, because if you're okay with taking something from somebody else, just for example, we
Mhm.
always use this example as a toy or something. If you're okay with taking somebody else's toy from them and being selfish and stuff like that, then you give permission. You open that door up
Mhm.
for somebody to come and treat you the exact same way. And it may not be the person that you did it to. It might
Mhm.
be somebody completely different that you don't know years later down the line.
Mhm. Absolutely.
But you don't get to pick
Mhm.
how that repayment comes back to you. Just
Mhm.
know that if you open that door, you standing right in line to receive your check that you that you
Mhm.
about to cash.
Mhm. Mhm. All praises. Sometimes you might take something that was from the person, it didn't mean nothing, but then what gets taken from you means everything. You can't. Excellent points. You can't call, and it's all fair because you open that door. You can't call how it's gonna come back on you. All praises.
I'll posit that if you have the mindfulness to recognize when you've done wrong
Mhm.
and know Allure well enough to know that something's coming your way, then you can choose to subjugate yourself to that consequence, and then he might let up off you because you're actually learning your lesson.
Hmm.
But if you're not humble enough to see his ways because of the package that it's wrapped in when it shows up,
Mm.
and you can't seem to humble yourself to whatever's across from you, then you might miss the opportunity to appease his wrath
Hmm.
and cause even more to come your way.
All praises. So perfect example of that was David, right? So just we can use one of his small situations when he did the census. This is not really a small. It wasn't small for him, but when we look at it as far as decisions that were made, he made some pretty bad decisions, right? In comparison to that, right? But what did he say? Hey, I'd rather be in the hands of my Alua than in the hands of man. Because with him, there's mercy. So let me humble myself under his hand. Now, this was the thing about David, what he always did, right? This is what made him a man after Elohim's heart. And then, because he did this, what was the result of that? The very next thing you read is him actually going up the to buy the field so that the threshing floor so that he can build the house of Elohim, right? So and then he says, no, I can't. I'm gonna take this from you of no cost to me. Like, nah, the only reason why I'm here is because he spared me and he gave compassion and mercy to me. So, like, notice how humbling yourself, even in the worst of situations, can be the doorway into being in the house of Elohim if you will do it. But if not, then you can cut yourself out.
All praises. Just to start off with, when you said learning meekness and humility to receive rest, um, the way you get rest is when you have accepted. So there's acceptance, there's repentance. Then once you do that, you're able to move on. And now you have rest within your mind. Like if you're not, like when a wrong has occurred and you get punished for it, if you're not able to accept what you did, not able to repent, but then you're always going to be wrestling with the shoulda, coulda, woulda type thing. So that rest comes from, no, okay, I accepted it. Okay, I'll be, this was my fault. I did the wrong. Please forgive me. Um, and then being okay with the punishment. As far as humility, what does it look like? How does it affect the process? If you're humbled, I just wrote that your mindset is positive. You're willing to learn from the mistakes. You're admitting the wrong, self-examining, and then you're giving praises to Yahuwah regardless. So you're like, okay, Father, all praises, Abiyah, Tada, for allowing me to be able to understand what I did. Thank you for bringing it to my attention, and help me to do better. But if you have pride, oftentimes you're angry, you're upset, you're frustrated, or you may pass that same rock again. So the same lesson may come in different ways. You may say, hold on, wait a minute. Didn't I just go through this last month or whatever, however many months or days it may be? So you're passing that same rock again that you're not willing to see your fault or your wrong. So Abiyah may go, okay, go and run that back. Since clearly you're not understanding what you did here. And then that causes you to miss the mark. It causes you to it causes you to miss the mark or the lesson that is supposed to be learned from um, the punishment. So definitely a loaded question, and it really does, like, humility versus pride. It's a game changer, to be honest, because I mean, if you're wrestling in your mind and you have no shalom or rest within yourself, then uh, you you often kind of go down a hill, like you're just mentally not stable. And if you're mentally not stable, then how are you able to hear Yahuwah's voice, and how are you able to see that change within yourself and what needs to be done? So yeah, it's definitely a deep question.
All praises.
And if I could just jump on one more time and just because you had brought something up, and I thought that was super significant, like even in this discussion, because you were talking about King David, forefather David, and buying the threshing floor. And I said, even that is significant because he could have bought a patch of flax, he could have bought any other plot of property,
Mhm.
However, he bought the threshing floor. What happens on the threshing floor? Stuff gets beat out,
Mhm.
stuff gets winnowed, stuff
Mhm.
gets trampled on. And then he chose the threshing floor to be the place that the house is built.
Mhm.
The house of Eloi is built. So after some stuff that has been beat out of you,
Mhm.
after some stuff gets trampled down from you, then the house of Yahuwah can be built.
Mhm.
Then you can start to bring forth, because didn't he call for it in the law already? Bring forth the pressed oil, the pure
Mhm.
oil for the lamp continuously.
Mhm.
Then you can start to do what it is that he's requiring of you. You can't do the requirement until some stuff get beat out and thrashed out of you.
Just yeah, this lesson is definitely for me because I know for me personally, when I make a mistake, like it hurts because especially like when it was done by you, when you were the person who did the mistake. So it's like Father has been working with me all this week just about my mindset on, okay, you made the mistake, but or whatever, because it could be something very, very tiny and small. But when you're somebody like you want everything to be right and you want to do everything right and no mistakes, like that's how I am. Like I'm a perfectionist. I really am. Like I'm a perfectionist. Like, okay, this got to be done. This got to be done. And sometimes he'd be like, listen, we're not gonna do this today. Do something different. And I'm gonna show you why. So it's like, yeah, like, and of course, intentional sin, that's a different story. You're gonna experience the wrath of Abihur. But if something occurs and it was unintentional, you didn't really fully understand, and and it was like a genuine heart, you didn't really mean nothing. The Father has more of a patience with that as far as somebody who's sinning intentionally. But I'm just saying, like, overall mistakes is the something that us humans definitely do deal with, like struggle with, like the acceptance, and then dealing with, okay, okay, this is what it is. Now I gotta look at what it is, and it's gonna take some time to get back to what it's not or what it was before. So yeah, it's a lot, like the process.
All praises.
Yeah, all praises. These moments in time for me, I'll say, are easier to overlook when somebody may have come at you wrong. They might flat out be wrong. But if you keep in mind that we are to be changed into the likeness of the Hamashiach from glory to glory, meaning it ain't all happening at once, but to the height of one learned lesson from there to the next. These opportunities are vital, but it is real easy to overlook your opportunity to grow, to suppress, delete, control, alt, delete some of those ways that we don't need to hold on to
Mhm.
when we're focused on what's across from us.
Mhm.
But we can capitalize on those moments, especially when somebody's coming at you incorrectly in a
Mhm.
manner that doesn't make holding on to your shalom easy.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I was kind of thinking on these things earlier in the week.
All
I had
praises.
made a note to myself that says, when we don't understand correction as mercy, we might misunderstand instruction as condemnation.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, yeah, it's been our conversation this week. Yeah, all praises.
When we don't understand correction as mercy, we might misunderstand instruction as condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when either an elder and naturally or an elder spiritually might be hesitant to even give instruction because it might be perceived that you're condemning somebody, telling them they need to change, or they might want to consider doing something another way. But that's just misperception, because correction in itself, the opportunity to change,
Mm-hmm.
is mercy.
Mm-hmm.
You brought it out earlier, when
Mhm.
we're given the opportunity to change, that's mercy from Elohim to man.
Mm-hmm.
When someone has the state of mind to offer you instruction that can benefit you, that will
Mhm.
benefit you, that is mercy. It's an extension of
Mhm.
mercy if we grab a hold to it.
Mm-hmm. All praises. All praises. So that sums it up, right? What he said is pretty much the essence of what I'm getting at with Jacob, right? This none of this is being done to condemn Jacob because he already told him going into this place, I'm gonna be with you no matter where you go. But just know, I'm gonna deal with you, right? Because he wouldn't be a father that loves us without correction. He chases the one he loves.
Because the rest gonna get condemned.
Hmm.
If we don't get corrected, and then we can't pass under the rod. We too high minded, haughty. We run right
Mhm.
into that mug thinking we gonna move it. We're
Mhm.
gonna perish before that rod budge.
Mhm.
Like,
Facts.
yeah. So for us to get whipped into shape before that time comes is absolutely his love.
All praises. So Proverbs 6:23. It says, "For the command is a lamp, and the Torah is a light, and reproofs of discipline or correction are a way of life." Right. So is it safe to say that we are taught through correction and that we can learn what is right and what is wrong by being disciplined and reproved? Notice that this is a way of life. So this is the way that life works. This is the way that life goes, right? It's going to be correction. It's going to be discipline. It's going to be change of course. All of that is all a part of the process of walking with Elohim, right? They didn't get given the coordinates in the wilderness all at one time, but instead they had to do what? Walk with the cloud, walk with the fire.
Yes. Yes.
So part of it is us learning how to humble ourselves so that we could be led by Elohim. That's the kind of relationship that he's looking for. All praises. So Proverbs 24:14, he says, "Know that wisdom is thus to your being. If you have found it, there is a future. And your expectancy is not cut off." So this is about, it's a process of learning wisdom a lot of times, right? We perish a lot of times for things of our ignorance, a lack of knowledge. But then he'll correct us, he'll discipline us, chasten us. We'll reap and we'll sow, or sow some of the things that we reaped, right? Or reap some of the things that we sowed, rather. And then, oh, that didn't come out the way that I thought that seed was. That little bitty seed came out like that. Oh my goodness, won't do that no more. And a lot of it is just being corrected so that you learn wisdom, right? It says that wisdom is a rock. It will walk with you crooked paths, right? Then, right, once you can be trusted and you're humble enough to stick with the correction that wisdom brings, then now it'll ease up off you, and now I can show you more.
Yes.
Right, it's gonna get easier and easier as it goes because you're gonna be getting a crude knowledge. It's the way that it works with the Father.
Helped you to develop an eye to see.
Submission. I think submission is a big word too. Uh, yeah, I don't know, when you were talking about that correction, my mind instantly went to Isha, because you know the marriage thing or whatever. So I'm just like, how that looks is, kind of how the Father deals with us, as a personal. There's an order, of course, as you. But I'm just saying, like, it starts within our household. I'm just saying, like, the corrections, because that's what we physically can see with our eyes. So it's like, how do you deal with me, for myself, Isha, when your Ish sends forth the correction for your own tov? How do you deal with that? Okay. How you deal with that? Is that how the way you deal with that? Is it that the way you deal with the Father when he corrects you? So I'm just saying, like, it's something to think about, and like physically and like spiritually, like how does that connect? And yeah.
All praises.
Yeah, that's told. That's told. And I was gonna say wisdom, just because what you just said made me think of something else, but I don't want to get sidetracked because I will real fast. Wisdom, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago. Wisdom, speaking of herself, says she was as one that was brought up with the Most High. She dwells there with him. He poured her out. all over. Before the foundation was laid, or before he broke open the deep, wisdom was there. And so if wisdom is walking by you, walking with you through these crooked pathways, and if wisdom is taking you by the hand and will not enter a malicious soul, she's teaching you the way of her ish. She's teaching you the way of LOI. She's teaching you the way of life. And then that's, it just made me think of that what you were talking about, because that scripture absolutely says once she can trust you, she will start to show you more. She's bringing you into the way of how he operates and what's for tov and what's for evil. So she's absolutely teaching you the way of LOI, the way of Yah. So that's just what came to my mind with that.
All praises. All praises. So it says, do not lie in wait, O wrong one, against the dwelling of the righteous. Do not ravage his resting place. So wait a minute. That means that there's a time where the Father is working with the righteous. And that don't just give the enemy, or that don't just give the wicked one permission to just have his way. Now you gotta hold off because I'm working, right? All praises.
That's the whole kit and caboodle right there that darkness can't afford for the masses to get an understanding of, because then there would be no more darkness. It just wouldn't even make sense to place your bets in the ways of the world anymore. Wickedness has its path. It seems to be straight. You can see from where you at to the end of that path. You know where it's going to take you. It's kind of cut and dry. You don't show me mercy, I ain't showing you mercy. You don't show me respect, I ain't showing you respect. I can't see an instant benefit, it just don't make sense. So on and so forth. And, it can get deep. Wisdom walking with you by crooked paths, sometimes you can't really compute the math until it's said and done. Sometimes you can't even see how it tallies up to make sense, or where your benefit comes in until it's said and done. Because the ways of wisdom ain't for you putting up your guard all the time to protect yourself. Sometimes you leave your guard down knowing that your creator has you. But if you don't know your creator has you because you ain't walked this path before, that makes the path crooked. You can't really see where this is going. But at the end of that, you'll be able to do the math because you realize he guarded you. Not that a threat didn't show up, but it wasn't able to take you under because you trusted him and he showed you why you should continue trusting him.
I just think that a lot of people blame the adversary when it's not the adversary.
Come on. Come on.
I just think that we got to remember Abba Yahuwah is all powerful, and the adversary has to stand before Yahuwah. He's given him a certain amount of power, but he still has to stand before Yahuwah to get permission to do anything. So I'm just saying, like, I think that it's, I always just try to stay into the mindset of, okay, Abba Yahuwah, show me, and not just see the adversary. Look, you're trying to bring me down. You're trying to, it could I'll be who is maybe trying to teach you a lesson or two. Maybe show yourself. You know what I mean, and what you need to be learning. Because again, we're trying to be as pure gold. We got to be passed through that fire to be refined. So it's going to be a process, and it's not easy, but it's worth it. So give praises and credit to Abba Yahuwah, where it's due, and making sure we understand what's going on within ourselves.
I was gonna, you spot on, because like you said, even if the adversary is the one bringing you down, he still has to stand before the master. He still has to stand before the creator, because he controls the left hand side and the right hand side of the throne. Everyone who he says in his word, he have appointed all the authorities. He have appointed them. Come on. And so if he did, or if he is allowing certain things to go on in our lives, certain situations where we would be real quick
Oh, the devil stole it. The devil trying to take me out. The devil is trying to do this and that. The devil, the devil, the devil, the devil, the devil. Listen, all of that. Listen, realize, have you been the devil? Are we the devil? Have we allowed this taking out by opening up the door to receive what it is that we have dished out? Number one, okay, maybe we haven't opened the door, let's say by chance, because I'm just gonna throw it out there. I don't think at this day and age anybody Job at this point. I don't think anybody can write for
it was rare, and he was the only one in his day.
It was rare in his day. So for there's a whole lot of people out here claiming to be Job, and I'm not gonna be foolish to say ain't nobody Job out here. No, but I'm saying with as much wickedness as runs around in this day and age is very rare. It's gonna be even more rare. Even more so that anybody is actually a Job in a Job situation. Just truth be told, self included. Got to look at it for what it really is. So, if there is an adversarial force or whatever allowed in our lives, why wouldn't the Father want us to be strengthened or our skin to be thickened? What if he has something greater for us to do later on down the line, that he has to buffet his soldiers, that he have to strengthen us, that he have to prove us, period? Like, how do we think we're going to get proven? You know, even metal don't come together without some kind of heat. You got to weld that thing together. You got, you know, it take time. So, you know, like, Most High controls both sides of that throne. He allowing it for a reason. And that's where I believe, like what your question says, how does pride or humility affect the process? That humility or pride, humility is either going to be a lubrication or a friction to the process. Humility being the lubrication to allow the process to go smoothly. You think of like an engine, like the pistons, and your engine need oil. Humility is likely going to be the oil in that engine that's going to allow the process and the bonding process or whatever it is to happen smoothly. Or if we prideful in the situation, it's going to be a whole lot of friction. And like Paul said, it's real difficult to kick against the pricks. It's real difficult to kick against the pricks. Shoot, gonna mess around, and kick against the prick and break a shin. That's what we gonna.
Right. So we left in the bush.
The
Pulsate. All praises. All praises. So then the verse that we all know and love and love to quote, right? He says, "For 7 times the righteous man falls and rises, but the wrong one stumbles into evil." Right. So it kind of would be told to look at the whole of what's being said in this whole section here, put it together, and we'll come out with a better picture. But yeah, all praises. Oh, Proverbs 4:18, it says, "But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines even brighter until the perfect day." So it's a process of getting brighter and brighter and brighter until the perfect day where you full light, right?
Glory to glory.
Glory to glory. All praises. It says the ways the wrong is like darkness. They do not know at what they stumble. Right. So the command is a lamp to your path, right? It is how I can see where I'm going. So when I do misstep or I do stumble over a stumbling block, I can look back and see what that thing was. The ones that are in darkness, the wicked, they stumble and don't know what they stumbled at, nor do they, I would venture to add, care. Right? Because they don't even view it as a stumbling a lot of the times. You ever seen a drunk man stumble? Not a care in the world. Don't even realize that they're doing it.
That's deep. It's absolutely deep.
It's where they all right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Swear up and down they all right. You good?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, looking at that stumbling in the walk with the Father in correlation to stumbling at the law.
Mm-hmm.
injunction with walking with the Father,
Mhm.
walking with the Father by His ways, being guided by His ways. When wisdom's trying to get you to go right on that crooked path, and you go left, not even realizing that you stumbled. What we stumbling at or being offended at, what causes us to be offended at the law when we just got to do it our way because of something that's ingrained in us.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's deep.
Mhm.
That's really, really deep. When
Mhm.
He's trying to get us to be more like Him, but every time we stumble is when we're struggling to let go of our own ways.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider how humility can affect that. The only reason that righteous man is able to get up is due to humility.
That's it.
Without it, we'll stay down at that fall, and that would just be where we're at.
Mhm. 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 All praises. So, is it possible that the process of reaping and sowing is put in place so that you will turn from a wicked way? Consider Leviticus 26. How many times more did Yahuwah say he would punish for sins? Right? How many extra years did Jacob work? So them first 7 was for free. That was a freebie. Even though I technically got something, I didn't get what I wanted. It says in later on in Jubilees that basically he worked 14 years for Rachel because he didn't count it as he worked any years for Leah because that was never part of his plan. He never wanted that.
So, are we looking at a snapshot of the results of us putting our hand to Yahuwah's plan? He say He's gonna do something. We think our ways are His ways, and get out ahead of Him, and this being the fallout. Because quite often, just because it's recorded in Scripture, it's assumed that this was all the Father's desired will until further inspection, maturity, and growth take place. And then we realize, no, I'm showing you the whole layout. Some things were told, some things were not told. I'm above it all. Y'all subject to the right and the left hand. Which one you want me to deal with? Sometimes people justified multiple wives, but when you look at the households of multiple wives, there's always havoc in each one of those houses. I'm not going to say what the Father was and wasn't doing, but I'm saying we shouldn't just mimic something because it's recorded in Scripture.
All praises.
I just wanted to add in right there while you were speaking about that, because it says in His word is the glory of the Most High to conceal a matter, but it is the glory of the kings to search that thing on out. Like you said, just it is in the scriptures and is laid out, and He's showing us everything. And it is a wrong assumption just to assume
because it's there. Repeat it.
that. Yeah, right.
Like, for our learning.
Just because it's there, this is what's supposed to happen. No, look at the fruit of the matter. Is this what the intent of the Most High was? Because from the beginning of the book to the very end, the intent of His heart, it wasn't fully seen. Like it wasn't. It never happened.
There's a whole lot of unrest.
Period. There's a whole lot of mess going on, and we think that it's okay to perpetuate the mess at times just because it's in the book. So they're supposed to happen. No, it is the glory of the kings of the earth to search this matter out and find out, wait a minute, how did that go wrong? What am I not supposed to repeat in this? That's all I wanted. That was key.
Yeah, what is the wisdom of it?
All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient.
Come on, this was not expedient.
At all.
All praises. All praises. So, humility versus pride. 1 Peter 5:6. He says, "Humble yourselves then under the mighty hand of Elohim, so that He exalts you in due time." Right.
There we go. Cool.
All praises.
I guess sometimes it happens. Thank you.
All praises. So, he says, humble yourselves then under the mighty hand of Elohim so that he exalts you in due time.
Mhm.
Right? Casting all your worry upon him, for he is concerned about you. Be sober, watch, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in the belief, knowing that the same hardships are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. And the Elohim of all favor, who called you to his everlasting esteem by Mashiach Yahushua, after you have suffered a while, himself perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. Right? So all of the hardship and all of that is meant to do what? Perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. Right? If you are unstable, if you are imperfect, if you aren't established,
Mhm.
right? If you are weak or not strengthened, then maybe some of these hardships and these things gonna come your way so that they can get that result out of you.
Precisely. Now there's less offense, not perpetuated, but less offense
Let me see.
taken. You don't seize the opportunity to put down your shalom to pick up offense, and now you're stumbling at keeping his commands. You get battle hardened.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute.
Mm-hmm. All praises. Proverbs 12, verse 1. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Straight like that. Proverbs 15, verse 5. A fool despises his father's discipline, but he who heeds reproof is clever. Proverbs 15, verse 9. The way of the wrong is an abomination to Yahuwah, but he loves him who pursues righteousness. Discipline is grievous to him who forsakes the way. He who hates reproof dies. But reproofs and correction are a way of what? Mm. So it's something about this that we need to love. Something about this process that we have to fall in love with.
And I love it the way these scripts are lined up right here because 1 Peter 5 and 6 through 10 tells you how to pursue righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
So it tells you how to become the apple of his eye.
Mm-hmm.
Father, I want to be like you so much, I'm going to trust you even when I don't see my win in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But so that I don't offend you, or like Shaul will say, so that I might win Mashiach, realizing it's not a guaranteed thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be tried, and then I have to be chosen based on the results that I'm able to bring forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all praises to the King.
All praises.
I've learned that you have to be okay with being wrong.
More praises.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
All praises.
That's absolutely heavy. And that's something, trying to teach. And it's difficult too to try to teach the children that as well. Because I can kind of relate in some situations to being that kind of perfectionist kind of person. It just depends on what the issue is. If I'm trying to work a certain thing and it's not happening the way I want it to happen, I completely get flustered and understand, what you're talking about in that situation. I started to see that in my children. I absolutely started to see that, especially in her. And so I had to get to a point where I'm telling her, like, no, it's okay to make mistakes. She would get like that on her schoolwork. It's okay to make mistakes because if you're making mistakes, that means you're learning or at least trying to learn. So you have to be okay with being incorrect or being wrong because now you get to learn behind that. You get to understand, your understanding opens behind that. So yeah, that's heavy, super heavy.
That part, what you said, because you're right. Like if you're showing out as an adult, what do you think your children are seeing within yourself? So, okay. Yeah, because I've corrected that. Okay, no, she's acting like this because she saw me act like this. So, correction. No, 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 no. It's okay. It's okay. Breathe. Take a. It's all right. You're gonna be okay. So yeah, like that's why it's even more essential to make sure that we are checking ourselves because our children, if you have them, they really do. They watch everything you do.
Just looking again at 1 Peter 5 and 10, the end of it, after you have suffered a while, himself perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. We were talking earlier about Genesis 29:1, the section of it where it said he went on his journey, and it's translated as he lifted his foot. Well, he was already strengthened, settled, and grounded in something,
Mhm.
but it shows movement. He's moving from one thing toward another thing
Mhm.
and lifting his foot. So there's a commitment to move on from where he was at in a forward direction
Mhm.
that he might be reestablished.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's pivotal, literally.
Bear the burden of that thing that he was previously established in, but needed to move on from.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
All praises.
All praises. Then verse 11 and 12, it says, Sheol and destruction are before Yahuwah. How much more the hearts of the sons of men? A scoffer does not love his reprover, nor does he go to the wise.
This is the condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
The light was coming to the world, but men loved darkness rather than the light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All praises. So it says, the wise in heart accepts commands, but one with foolish lips falls. That's Proverbs 10:8. Proverbs 12:15. The way of the foolish, or the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who listens to advice is wise. And then Proverbs 14, verse 7 says, leave the presence of a foolish man, for you shall not perceive the lips of knowledge. The wisdom of the clever is to understand his way. So something about your ways, that you'll be wise if you can get some understanding for them.
Oh, yep, cool.
All praises. He says, but the folly of fools is deceit. Fools scoff at guilt, but among the straight there is delight. So a fool scoffs at guilt, but among the straight there's delight. The heart knows his own bitterness, and no stranger shares its joy. So notice this is a turning point for Jacob in his life. If he chooses humility under the mighty hand of Elohim, there's a strong chance that he will later be exalted after he has suffered for a while. But if he chooses pride and refuses correction, there's a strong chance that he will be made even lower than he already is. Now, in this case, Jacob is still being wronged by Laban, right? So that's the trick of the flesh and being short-sighted is, no, but this person is wrong. That you can't accept the divine thing that's happening in your life at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the deep part because there's a whole transaction that could take place in one direction or another.
Mhm.
Here you can exchange back and forth with the man across from you because, yeah, man, just like I am.
Mhm.
I put on my pants just like him. I put on my cloak just like him. Or you could be mindful to be higher and operate on your higher nature, your spiritual side, and it's an exchange with Elohim. I'm gonna suffer now so I don't have to suffer later. Because I know that I've done wrong and I deserve to suffer. So I might continue to walk with you. Yes, I accept of whatever punishment you're gonna send my way. Yeah, all praises.
But yeah, all praises. So he could choose to only look at this moment and forget his own transgression, or he could choose humility and accept that this is in the hands of Elohim. Remember, he was visited by Elohim on his way into this place, right? So the question is, how do you choose humility even when you are being done wrong, right? Because that's really what humility is. Like, there's one level of humility which is in this situation. No, I'm being wronged in this situation. But does that give you the right to turn up, right? To XYZ? Sometimes it's no, I'm gonna still choose humility because the Father is gonna level the playing field, like y'all say, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
that's remembering him.
Mm-hmm.
These opportunities come, like you said, bind them as frontlets.
Mm-hmm.
Let this be the forefront of your focus.
Mm-hmm.
Let this be what you gaze and see everything through.
Mm-hmm.
He was visited before coming into this place. Now he's in a place where it's very easy to forget that Elohim is with him.
Mm-hmm.
But being mindful, you can remember.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All praises. And then we never touched on that picture, but spiritual arrogance is pride goes before destruction. So anytime you choose pride, it's always going to go before what? Destruction.
Sowing and reaping.
Mm-hmm. So 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 5, it gives us an example of how you choose humility even when you the one being done wrong. So King David, it says, and when King David came to Bakurim, he saw a man from the clan of the house of Shaul, whose name was Shimei, son of Gera, coming from there. He came out cursing as he came, and he pelted with stones David and all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right and on his left. And this is what Shimei said as he cursed, get out, O man of blood, O man of Belial. If you know anything about what a son of Belial is, David was far from that. But continue. It says, Yahuwah has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Shaul, in whose place you have reigned. And Yahuwah has given the reign into the hand of Absalom, your son. And see, you are in your own evil, for you are a man of blood. And Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the sovereign, why should this dead dog curse my master, the king, or the sovereign? Please let me pass over this place and take off his head. And the sovereign said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Sariah? For let him curse, even because Yahuwah had said to him, curse David. And who should say, why did you do that? So how is he looking at this situation? It's all in the Father's hands. The trick is for you to look at this individual. Now you done cut his head off, and now what he said, what he accused you of is true. You got blood on his hands.
And what situation was the sovereign David in this moment? He was not in a place of comfort.
Far from it.
He was in a place where it should be really, really hard to forget, I need to appease the Father's wrath. And it's sad that we are so forgetful. Sometimes it's only when we're in these pressing situations that we remember him the way we ought to remember him when everything is told.
All praises. So it says, and David said to Abishai and all his servants, see how my son, this is what we was just talking about, right? See how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life, and how much more now this Benjamite. Leave him alone and let him curse, for Yahuwah has spoken to him. If so be, Yahuwah does look on my affliction, and Yahuwah shall return tob or good to me for his cursing today. And David and his men went in the way. Shimei walked alongside him on the hillside and cursed as he went and threw stones at him and kicked up dust. And the sovereign and all the people who were with him became weary, and they refreshed themselves there. So notice that there is a certain acceptance that David is able to walk with, knowing that everything that occurs is in the Father's hands. For David, why was his son coming against him and trying to usurp the throne, right? He already understands that this whole situation is the fruit of something that he sowed. He was told when he did what he did with Bathsheba, this was going to be what your life is going to look like. So there's a certain level of acceptance that he can walk in, although it's not direct. It's not a direct door, so it seems, of, oh, I ain't done nothing to this man for him to be speaking against me this way. But when you look at it from the grand scheme, it's all in the Father's hands. No, I can accept that whatever it is, and whatever comes, I can accept that, and the Father will make it right or wrong one way or the other. So I don't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
And then the Father did make it right. Later on, this man got every bit what he did, what he had coming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all praises.
Yeah, because King David had something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Weeping might endure for a night,
Mm-hmm.
but when that sun rises with healing in his wings, there's some
Mm-hmm.
promises that I'm hoping not to lose out on, although I've done this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He even says it in one place, like, though he calls it not to grow, he's celebrating what his house is going to be like in the far future.
Mm-hmm.
Although in his day, he ain't going to see it. But he's dancing and praising the Most High because the Father's going to keep his promises.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I got this opportunity to endure now, he's going to keep his end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this whole thing is put together. Like those crooked paths is you don't always get what you want right now. But if you can endure and not lose wisdom and not lose out on the lessons that it's trying to teach you, then you'll have plenty to celebrate in its season
Mm-hmm.
when that rain comes.
Mm-hmm.
It says, by these great and precious promises, we might be partakers of the divine nature. We might become more like him
Mm-hmm.
by the promises.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we do reap benefits now, but that's not always guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can hold on to keep him in my remembrance
Mhm.
and keep sight of those promises, we got plenty fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All praises. So the question is, would you choose to continue to suffer knowing that things are in the Father's control? Would you choose to be low for the sake of the reward that the Father promises after you have been afflicted for a while? Just like what Ak was saying, right? So keep in mind what Jacob was told on his way into this situation. That's Genesis 28, 13 through 15. He said, and see, Yahuwah stood above it and said, I am Yahuwah, Elohim of Abraham, your father, and the Elohim of Isaac. The land on which you are lying, I give it to you and your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall break forth to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. And see, I am with you and shall guard you wherever you go, and shall bring you back to this land. For I am not going to leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Right? So I'm not going to leave you until I've done all the things that I've spoken. But all while I'm on the side of you, all these things is happening to you. Yeah, I'm here in the midst of that. Right? Nothing that Laban is doing is happening outside of the Father's providence, because he already told him, when you go over there, I'm going to be with you over there too.
Just another side of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Correction.
Mm-hmm. All praises. So to put it simply, even with everything that is happening with Jacob, the Father is with him. So this means even when he has done wrong, the Father is there in the midst of that as well. This also means that the Father will be the one that returns him to the land of his fathers, right? So he's not going to make it back on his own strength, but the Father is going to be the one that's going to bring him back.
All praises.
So all praises. So still have a decent amount of slides left. It should be pretty simple to get through. However, I'm gonna try to make it through them, if that's all right. All praises.
Remember your instruction.
All praises. So humility versus pride. So 1 Peter 1:3 says, blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be born again to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yahushua Mashiach from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief, for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time, in which you exult, even though for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by manifold trials. So sometimes we're going through some of these cycles because it's necessary, right? If need be, you're going to go through this.
Come on.
If the long route is what's necessary for you to make it through this wilderness, well, that's the route we're going to take, because the Father's goal is that you get there,
Come on.
if at all possible, right?
Yes, sir. Some were tormented by fiery serpents. Some were put to death by them same serpents.
Mhm.
Can't get rights. Let us not be the can't get rights. If you need humility, there and we don't choose humility, a situation might occur that forces us into a humble role. And if we don't celebrate Yahuwah in that by trusting him, then we might be those can't get rights.
All praises. All praises. It says, in order that the proving of your belief, much more precious than gold that perishes. So why does this happen? So that your belief, your faith can be increased, it can be proved, which is more precious than whatever this thing is, this tangible thing is. And proven by fire might be found to result in praise and respect and esteem at the revelation of Yahushua Mashiach. This is what this fiery furnace is about. And that's what this furnace of affliction, even with our people, Jacob, is all about. So we can either choose to humble ourselves in this situation or continue to kick against the pricks. Me, all the while not changing. He says, whom having not seen you love, in whom you exalt with unspeakable and esteemed joy, yet not seeing, but believing, obtaining the goal of your belief, a deliverance of lives. Concerning this deliverance, the prophets have sought out and searched out, prophesying concerning the favor for you, searching to know what and what sort of time the spirit which was in them was pointing out concerning Mashiach, when it was bearing witness beforehand the sufferings of Mashiach and the esteems that would follow, to whom it was revealed that they were serving not themselves but you in these matters, which now have been announced to you through those who brought the Tob news or the good news to you by the set apart spirit sent from heaven, into which messengers long to look into. Then the question is just, do you think it's possible that the same process is being worked in Jacob? Is this same process of refining being worked in Jacob to get a end result and an end goal for something that he is looking towards? Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, this is the end goal. I want to build you up and I want this covenant to be an everlasting covenant. But in order for us to get there, you got some work to do, bro. So how about we go into this furnace of affliction? And depending on how you doing this is determine how long you're going to be in it. And, we can work some things out. But if you endure, you'll make it out on the end refined.
He that endureth to the end. Yeah.
All praises. So Jacob's cycle. All right. So now we find ourselves at the moral of the story for Jacob. If we pay close attention, we will see how from this point forward, things are going to start changing for Jacob because of a change that has already occurred in him. Right. So in the next slide, we will look at a part of a chiasm that spans the life of Jacob to see what we can glean from it. All right. So the pivoting point or climax of the chiastic structure is called the central axis, and it will oftentimes express the goal of the cycle or reveal the moral of the story. And just for anybody that doesn't remember what a chiasm is, the definition is there on the right of the screen. It's a reversal or crossing of grammatical structures in successive phrases or clauses, right? So some examples are: you forget what you want to remember, right? Forget what you want to remember. And then the reverse: and you remember what you want to forget. Right. So a chiasm is literally going up the hill in one direction and then coming down the hill in the opposite direction. The same events getting repeated in reverse order. Right. So the quick definition of chiasm is simply a repetition of similar ideas in the reverse order. Now I got an example there. You got A1, B1, C1, D1. These are all points or themes in a story, right? And then you have the highlight or the climax of it, which is the central axis. This is the pivot point, and then it goes in reverse order. So then you go from D back to point C, back to point B, back to point A, right?
Yeah. All praises.
All praises. So a chiasm can be established by repeating words, phrases, and or themes. So looking at these parallel themes can lead us to spiritual insight that we might have otherwise overlooked. All right, so Jacob's cycle, right? So this is just a quick recap of the things that the points that we've already gone over, right? So point A, got it all color coded. Point A, the blessing is taken from Esau. That was in Genesis 27, 1 through 46. So we saw Jacob steal the birthright from Esau using cunning and deceit. Because of this, his brother Esau's anger is kindled towards his, prompting him to want to kill him. At this point, Jacob is a swindler, one who is willing to take from another at all costs to obtain what he desires, right? So Genesis 27:36, Esau said, was his name then called Yaakov, for he has caught me by the heel these 2 times. He took my birthright, and see, now he has taken my blessing. And he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Right? So at this point, he's taking a blessing from Esau, right? Point B is Jacob flees from Esau and meets the messengers of Yahuwah. That's Genesis 28, 1 through 22, right? Jacob is forced to leave the promised land because of his transgression. Now, as I'm going through these things, look at the state of Jacob as a people today. And just tell me if you see a parallel with the way that his life story is going and the way that the story of his descendants has gone over and over again.
Yeah, it's deep. I was gonna hold off because when you started giving the definition of the chiasm, it brought to mind Genesis 3, the consequence of the serpent interfering with Adam's walk, and your heel kind of being synonymous with your walk or your lifestyle, how you move through this walk. And he told the serpent, like, he's gonna bruise your head, although you bruise his heel. So because you were able to get into his head in the beginning, you bruise his head, messing up the way he walked, ultimately bruising his heel. In the end, he's gonna bruise your head, no longer operating out of your thoughts or exalting you in the air, ultimately stopping you from moving about when he's no longer bringing forth your ways. Yeah, it's deep.
All praises. All praises. So on his way out, he is visited by Elohim and sees the Malachim of Yahuwah ascending and descending. Right. So it was brought up earlier, but just consider that these were the Malach or the messengers of Elohim going to and fro in the earth, quote unquote, going up and down. And then you look in Job and you see that this son of Elohim, although he be an adversarial Ruach, doing the same. So is this something that's a part of what they are commanded to do or what their role is to do? That this is what they do, right? Job 1 verse 6, it says, and the day came to be that the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahuwah, and Shaitan also came among them. And Yahuwah said to Shaitan, from where do you come? And Shaitan answered Yahuwah and said, from diligently searching the earth, from walking up and down in it. Right? Same thing that we saw what these Malachim was doing in his vision. And then point C, Jacob arrives at Haran, where he is taken advantage of. He was deceived regarding his wages for the work he did. All right. So We already saw that. His wages were supposed to be Rachel, right? Is that what he got? No, not quite like the way that he worked for it, right? So he got deceived in that. And this, Jacob learns what it feels like to be on the other side of his typical behavior. He is able to understand what the consequences of his actions feel like. Although he has been wrong, he comes to accept this outcome and works another 7 years for the same wages. So keep in mind that he was given Rachel before he worked the 7 years for her. His decision to stay and work for her, even after he has received her, shows a maturity and set apart aspect of his character. Truly, a swindler would have skipped town and disappeared, right? So, and again, just we see Jacob sent out for something that was unrighteous in him. Children of Israel sent out of the promised land, his descendants for something unrighteous in them. Then on the way to the land, you see you getting visited by this Malach of Yahuwah, by these messengers. And then on our way out of the land, we were visited by what? Messengers. All of his prophets. All of those that came saying, hey, repent. You about to get purged out of this land. If you repent, once you get out of this land, he'll bring you back. Right? He's going to be with you in this land of your captivity as long as you yield to his correction. But for now, build houses and do everything you need to do in this land. May as well get comfortable because these 70 years got to be served. Right?
Yes, sir.
And then you got that whole process of Leviticus 26. But if still you don't get it, 7 times more. 7 times more. And it becomes a process. So we have to ask ourselves, why now, after thousands of years? What are we missing? And it's got to be that point C, right? Humbling yourself. Now that this is coming back on me, okay, it's one thing for us to be being oppressed, which all of these things were things that we were promised would happen to us if we did not obey.
Come on.
But if you don't want to accept and acknowledge the sins of your fathers and your own that you're doing the same and worse, then you're going to keep on staying in this cycle. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse progressively. Come on. Furnace going to get turned up. The heat going to get turned up each time. So the fact that we still in this cycle just shows that it's something that we didn't do that Jacob is now doing, right? We didn't come to accept. This is what it is. And we had this coming. But now the best that we can do, because this is really ultimately what it's about, is, okay, here I am at this point. David was a master at this. I can't go back in the past. This is what it is, and I got to reap whatever it is that I sowed. That's fine. But it's mercy and his compassion in his hands. Even this can be to my tobe and to my benefit as long as I'm with him. So with that being said, I'm going to give him some praise now, and all I can do is just move forward from this point. That's it. True repentance. Repentance is hit that U-turn. Reverse. Stop going in that direction and turn back. But it's not just a turning back. It's what are you turning back to? You're turning back to the Father in full fidelity.
So without focus, you're going to perish.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have vision. You got to have a course chosen. But one going to be chosen for you. And in this realm, it ain't going to be for your toe. Because the Father isn't going to force his ways upon you.
That part.
But there's something else that'll come in and give you some ways if you don't choose some for yourself.
100%. 100%. All praises. So here we arrive at the central axis of our chiastic structure. In this, we see that the theme repeats. From this point, the themes of the chiasm will start to be told again in reverse order. By focusing on the theme of the central axis, we are given spiritual insight on what the Father is trying to express to us. So the seed here, now we see the seed of Jacob is increased, and then we're going to see that the seed of his flocks are going to be increased. The central point here is that Jacob becomes fruitful. That's what everything leading up to this point was for, was so that he would bear fruit. Not just physically, but spiritually. Right? So Jacob is, and the seed of Jacob is increased. right? Jacob is blessed and the seed of Jacob is increased. So I'm gonna go down through the list of these children here that he has, and we'll just look at what the mother said, and then we're gonna see could there be a picture of prophecy found in the statement said when the when the nation of Israel was being built. Will we see this later when the nation is built? And again, can this be a blueprint of things still yet to occur? Right. So just look at the phrases of what the mothers said. So when Reuben was born, said, Yahuwah has looked on my affliction. With Simeon, Yahuwah has heard that I am unloved. With Levi, this time my Ish is joined to me. With Judah, now I praise Yahuwah. With Dan, Elohim has ruled rightly in my case. Naphtali, I have overcome. With Gad or God, fortune comes. Asher, I am happy. Issachar, Elohim has given me my hire. Zebulun, now my Ish is going to dwell with me. Joseph, Elohim has taken away my reproach. Right? And something happened at, what was it, Gilgal, when they all got circumcised before they went into the land. And then they said, what? On that day, the reproach of the children of Israel was rolled away. Just, you don't see that this is a process and a blueprint of us as a nation. When you put all of these statements together, who has looked on my affliction and he heard that I am unloved. This time my Ish is joined to me. Now I praise Yahuwah. Elohim has rightly ruled my case. I have overcome. Fortune comes. I am happy. Elohim has given me my hire. Now my Ish is going to dwell with me. Elohim has taken away my reproach. Right? It's a whole story of what he's doing with us as a nation.
It really sounds like a song.
All praises. All praises. So now this point is important because this was the ultimate goal of Elohim for Jacob the whole time. This process was used as a furnace of affliction so that Jacob would be purified in the process. There were things about his character that needed to be burned away if he wanted to become not only pure in the sight of Elohim, but also exceedingly fruitful. Here we see just that. Jacob is becoming exceedingly fruitful through this situation of his refining, right? And again, we see it's not just happening on a physical level, but it's happening on a spiritual level. And because it's happening on the spiritual level, it's able to happen on a physical level, right? So the goal of Elohim was to make Jacob fruitful. Remember, this is the essence of the covenant, right? Genesis 28:13 through 15. What did he say? Your seed shall be as the dust of the earth. In other words, I'm going to make you fruitful, right? So we see now, however, that this fruitful bounty was not just referring to the physical, but also speaks of his character and the character of his fruitful descendants. We all know Deuteronomy 28 and how this works. The blessing of the physical fruit was a blessing for obedience, the spiritual fruit. Remember what Elohim said to Abraham, Genesis 18, verse 17. And Yahuwah said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him, so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahuwah, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahuwah brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. Right? So this is a whole process where he's trying to make him abundantly fruitful in Ruach. Just like we said, Deuteronomy 28. If you are obedient and you do these things according to your obedience, then that's when you're going to see all of these bounties. Your flocks are going to be fruitful. But only then. If you don't, then what? You're going to see that opposite effect. The stuff going to get taken from you, right? And your fruit of your womb going to be taken by other nations. And you going to long and desire for them and won't have no power in your hand. That's when we see all of these things, right? Your basket going to be empty and all of this stuff.
I'm just going to reiterate in another way. He that has shall be given. He that has not, even that which he thinks he has, shall be taken.
Mhm. All praises. All praises. I was gonna put that in the lesson and didn't. So yeah, all praises. All praises. So Genesis chapter 30, verse 25. It says, and it came to be when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way to go to my own place and to my land. Give my wives and my children, give my wives and my children from whom I have served you, and let me go. For excuse me, let my people go. Okay. For you yourself know my service which I have done for you. And Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay, for I have diligently watched that Yahuwah has blessed me for your sake. And he said, name your wages, and I give it. Sound like the same thing he said before. So we already know how this story gonna go, right? So he said to him, you know how I have served you and how your livestock has been with me. For the little you had before I came has increased greatly, and Yahuwah has blessed you since my coming. But now, when am I to provide for my own house too? And he said, what do I give you? And Jacob said, give me nothing. Very, very different from his original, how he used to move. Dollar signs, he'd be like Mr. Krabs, dollar signs in his eyes, right? But now it's not, don't give me anything. Don't get, kind of got a little bit of, it's reminiscent of his father, Abraham, right? With the king of Sodom. Now don't give me anything, lest you say I have made Abraham rich, right? Now he done learned a little bit, whereas before we saw, give me your birthright, right? Completely different. Whereas before he would exploit, now he's being exploited. But the father is he's gonna shore it up. Mhm. So he says, let me pass through all your flock. He says, give me nothing. If you do this for me, I shall again feed and guard your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the black ones among the lambs, and all the spotted and speckled among the goats. And these shall be my wages. And my righteousness shall answer for me in the time to come. Completely different. Before his unrighteousness answered for him at the time. Now he's saying completely different tune. He's bearing a completely different set of fruit. When you come concerning my wages, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, it is stolen if it is with me. So now we are seeing a transformation of Jacob's character. This process of working under Laban has humbled him. Instead of his old ways of deceit and trickery, we see he now has a reputation with Laban of righteousness, right? The only reason why Laban is even going to entertain this is because he's been righteous amongst him the whole time. Like his work can speak for it. Look at how I've been with you with your flocks up to this point. It's been 14 years, at least. Mm. Jacob enters this situation and is no longer gullible to the ways of Laban. He has made a change in himself and has decided to put his trust in Yahuwah anyways, knowing how this will end up with Laban, right? So now that suffering for a while so that you can be established and strengthened and all of these things, now we're seeing a result of that, right? Before he went into this situation with Laban gullible, but now he knows exactly All praises. Maybe toe. All praises. So the key to remember is what Elohim told him. He has belief in this. He told him he would be with him and would not leave him until he returns back to the promised land. All right, so basically, I'm gonna start recapping some things. But Jacob cycle. So basically, now we're at the second D, and you're gonna see how it's gonna repeat, right? It's gonna go in reverse. So before we just read how his the fruit of his loins increased. Now we're gonna see how the fruit of his flocks is gonna increase, and that's gonna start seeing fruitful, and the story is gonna start going in reverse from this point. All right, so basically Genesis 30 verse 34 through 43 goes into detail about how his flocks got increased, right, and how basically this breeding process that he did. We're gonna get in a couple slides the reason why he does this and why it's effective, right? But the key detail is notice here that the theme repeated, and we see how both the fruit of his body and the fruit of his flocks have been multiplied because of the fruit of his character and the promise of Elohim. This is the central axis, the moral of the story. What does this mean for the descendants of Jacob now, as we are in a similar place? Exiled from the land of promise because of our deeds, looking to return to the land of promise, our father's house. What must we do to become fruitful in a foreign land, right? So these are things for us to consider. And the whole key with Jacob at every turn was humility. Right. So next point, Jacob leaves Haran, and now we're seeing a repeat of the themes of point C, right? So point C before was that he arrived in Haran and there was a deception of wages. Now we're seeing that he's going to leave Haran and there's going to be deception of wages. All right, so says verse 31 starting in verse 1, it said, or chapter 31 starting in verse 1, it says, and he heard the words of Laban's son saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father he has made all this wealth. So now really pay attention to some details in this story, right? Prior to Jacob taking over the flocks, Laban was up, right? He was big mad up. Jacob don't work for him all these years and has been increased. That's what the speech just was. You've seen how you increased so much since I've been with you. You had a little when I came. Now look at you. You balling. Because he has a heart in this and to be unrighteous in dealing with, you're gonna start seeing the wealth of the wicked being given over to the hands of the righteous. And now it's done got to the point to where his flock is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, while Jacob is steadily increasing right there in his house. Right? Huh. I wonder if. All right. They said Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father, and he has made all this wealth. And Jacob would look at the face of Laban and see that it was not toward him as before. And Yahuwah said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I am with you. So now, because he's humbled himself in this process, right? Now the father has been allowed to work, and he's now taken wealth, made him wealthy in the house of his, for lack of a better term, captivity, and I sent him away off with something. Meanwhile, judging the house that he was in, that dealt with him unrighteously. Can the same thing be said for us today? Is Babylon gonna fall? And then when it falls, will there be a beginning for Jacob and a kingdom for Jacob?
Indeed. This is why we're right here. It's Proverbs 3 and 31. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. Because when you start choosing the ways of the oppressor, you're not becoming more like your creator, and then he's not going to increase you in that.
Mhm.
When you trust him and choose his ways instead of the ways of oppression, he has room to move,
Mm-hmm.
and also provide an opportunity for the oppressor to choose to humble themselves whether or not they take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's our position. That's how
Mhm.
we pay our vows.
Mm-hmm. All praises, because the opportunity was given. He said, "Let me go." Nah. I'm gonna still give some milk a little bit more out of you. Whole another 6 years. Mm. All praises. But these last 6 gonna do you in. It ain't about to be the same play what you thought you was running. Mm.
Sound real good.
Mm. Says verse 4, right? Yeah, verse 4. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock. Mm. Now okay. No longer with their father's flocks, but come out of the house of their father, and they go, oh, okay. All right. And said to them, I see your father's face, that it is not toward me as before, but the Elohim of my father has been with me. And you know that I have served your father with all my strength. Again, he has a reputation to show for it. Yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. He said, and you have dealt falsely, right? Well, how many times did we put Yahuwah to the test in the wilderness? You have these 10 times. Okay, I just wonder if we seeing a process and a cycle getting laid out. But Elohim did not allow him to do evil to me. When he said this, the speckled are your wages, that all the flocks bore speckled. And when he said this, the streaked are your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked. So Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. And it came to be at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and looked in a dream and saw the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and mottled. And the messenger of Elohim spoke to me in a dream, saying, Yaakov. And I said, Here I am. He named me. And he said, Lift up your eyes now and see. And all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the El of Bethel, where you anointed the standing column, and where you made a vow to me. Now rise up and get out of this land and return to the land of your relatives. So, because he has been faithful and learned his lesson, the Father has blessed him and has determined that he will no longer suffer at the hands of the oppression of Laban. Laban has served his purpose. Jacob has been proven. Now his situation can change because he has changed. All right, so Genesis 31:14, and Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as strangers? For he has sold us and also entirely consumed our silver. For all the wealth which Elohim has taken from our father is ours and our children's. Now then, do whatever Elohim has told you. So Jacob rose and put his sons and his wives on camels, and he drove off all his livestock and all his possessions which he had acquired, his property of livestock which he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. So interestingly, when we look into additional historical references for context, we see why the women were so upset with their father, and it sheds even more light on Laban's character. Notice what they said about him. He had eaten their silver, a phrase used to denote that he had consumed their portion on his own appetite. So, So Philippians 3:18, it says, for many of whom I have told you, and now say to you, even weeping, walk as enemies of the stake of Mashiach. Their end is destruction, their mighty one is their stomach, and their esteem is in their shame. They mind the earthly, for our citizenship is in the heavens, from which we also eagerly wait for the Savior, the Master, Yahushua Mashiach, who shall change our lowly body to be conformed to his esteemed body, according to the working by which he is able to bring all under his control. And then Romans 16:17, now I call upon you, brothers, watch out for those who cause divisions and stumbling, contrary to the teaching which you learn, and turn away from them. For such ones do not serve our master, Mashiach Yahusha, but their own stomach. And by smooth words and flattering speech, they deceive the hearts of the innocent. Right? So, again, we see the same character in Laban. All right, so this is a book here, readings from the ancient Near East. It's not an expensive book either. I think I saw where you can get a copy of this on like Amazon or something like that for like 10-15 bucks. But this is what it says here, some historical context. This is Turpuna's bride price. Nuzai marriage agreement illustrates the proper distribution of the bride price. The father could give a portion to the bride herself or retain it on her behalf in case her husband died or abandoned her. This practice sheds light on the complaint of Laban's daughters that Laban had used the money and reduced their marriages to sales transactions. Since Laban could no longer provide their financial security, they had no hesitation about leaving with Jacob. And this is what the scroll, or the tablet rather, that they found says. It says, thus says Aranturi, and this is a Babylonian tablet. It says, daughter of Pekiah, my daughter Turpana placed my husband for me at my disposal, and I have sold Turpana as wife. I have received the money from her husband, and the daughter of Turpana, Eluanza, is living as a servant. Now I have given Eluanza as my daughter-in-law to Matkashar, and Matkashar shall sell Eluanza to a man as wife, and she shall receive and use 40 shekels of silver for her from her husband. Right? So the husband will pay the bride price or the dowry, and then a portion of that was reserved to the daughter. In this case, it was 40 shekels of silver that she could use that was for her. And now I have given, or I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Thus says Aranturi, my father gave me 1 immer of land as dowry, and now I have given to the same Matkashar, and Matkashar, in accordance with the other tablet to their sons, shall give it. To a stranger she shall not give it. Thus further says Aranturi, the money for Kanzu I have received and used, and the remaining money of Kanzu belonging to Matkashar I have given to her, 6 witnesses, 5 seals. Proverbs 13, verse 21. Evil pursues sinners, but good or Tob is repaid to the righteous. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. And we see this happening with Laban. He didn't leave an inheritance for his children's children. And so now the wealth of the sinner is being stored up for the righteous. All praises. Okay, so this is actually our next point. No, this is not our next point. This is actually tapping into our previous point, right? This is basically, I'm going to jump through it. This is Genesis 31:19 through 29. But this is basically Jacob explaining and going back through why he did what he did with the flocks, and that this was all under Elohim's hand, that he received in a dream. These ones were going to be mine, and this is what he did, right? And no, actually, this is the part where he all praises. This is actually the part where where now he's fleeing, and Laban tries to pursue him, but we're gonna see that Laban gets stopped in his pursuing by these same angels of Elohim, the same ones that was going up and down. So now we're seeing how there's a part of the process of they actually are paying Jacob some attention now. They actually see him. All praises. All right, so continuing Jacob's cycle. This is continuing in Genesis 31, 30 through 40. And then you all can read it for time's sake in your own time. But basically, they have a run in because after he flees, some things take place. And on the way out of captivity, trying to get back into the promised land, somebody of Jacob's house clung on to some of these old idols. And we'll come back to that in a future Parsha because this is going to play. This scenario here is going to come back up, I believe. But yeah, we seen this whole process take place as he leaves. Like I said, you can read it in your own time for sake of time. Okay. Another excerpt from that same book. All praises. So another excerpt from that same book. This is an old Babylonian shepherding contract, just for some historical context, by Finkelstein, old Babylonian herding contract. I believe these things are on page like 72 or something like that in this book. But yeah, you can read that as well. It's basically just an example of the sort of transaction that Jacob and Laban are partaking in. You see the same thing taking place here with basically the wages being of the flock. We see that was custom.
So, in other words, for those who don't have the book, it is advised to pause the screen and read what's going on the screen, just to get a further historical context. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Absolutely. And then some things in Torah, obviously, these are things that we know. Exodus 22, verse 1, jumping down to 9, verse 15, about possession of flocks and things like that, and what you're supposed to do when you have flocks in your care, and what the penalties are for stealing of another's flock. All of that is there in Torah, and then we can cross-reference that back with Jacob's character and see that, no, he was righteous in his dealings with Laban. Okay, so verses 41 through 47, Jacob and Laban make a oath before one another. They make a covenant with one another. And you kind of get the details of that in this text. Again, you can read it for yourself. But the main key takeaway here is just, again, you can look at Jacob and see righteous character now being developed in him. Right? Just like he said, these 20 years I've been in your house, I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. But throughout all of this, he still remained righteous. Okay, and then this next slide is just finishing that reading out. Okay, so our next point is Jacob returns to Esau and meets the messengers of Elohim, and this is chapter 32, 1 through 32. And then this is a parallel of the first B point, which is Jacob flees from Esau and he meets the messengers of Yahuwah. So 32 verse 1, and Jacob went on his way and the messengers of Elohim met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the camp of Elohim. And he called the name of that place Machanaim. So It says, and Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the field of Edom. Right. So now we see him going through a process of trying to make things right with his brother. Right. Notice how we see that the messengers of Elohim are keeping a close eye on Jacob now and making sure that everything works out according to the Father's plan. He is no longer only seeing them going up and down in the earth doing business as usual, but now he is within the camp of Elohim. So this same word for camp is used to describe the camp of Israel in the wilderness being led by the cloud with the presence of Elohim in their midst. We know it we know it we know that there cannot be anything undesirable in the camp of Elohim. So for him to be in the camp of Elohim, that must mean that he's in a state of purity or cleanness. There's nothing impure about him because he wouldn't have been allowed access into this presence. Whereas before, he saw afar off the ladder and they were going up and down, descending and not paying any attention to him. So now we see a complete difference because a character change that's occurred in him. He's been able to level up. So overall, I wanted us to see that the change is one that occurs inwardly first. This puts you in a place where the Father can begin to bless you and show favor to you, and you will not be foolish to squander it. When the Father's hand is upon you, learn meekness and humility. This will be the key to your stability as you grow and walk with Elohim. This is not an instant process. We are seeing this occur over a 20-year period with Jacob. 20 years. So the goal is to be seen as one after Elohim's own heart. We have to be willing to accept his correction, reproof, instruction, and redirection. This is what it means to walk with Elohim. When we look at what the Father is doing, we can walk in shalom in the process, knowing that he is working in us for our benefit. This is why we are to count it all joy when we fall into various trials. It is a daily walk, and when the Father redirects, it is to be rejoiced over, because this is his way of showing that he sees and cares for you. Now Habakkuk 2 verse 3 says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, and it speaks of the end and does not lie. If it lingers, wait for it shall certainly come, it shall not delay. See, he whose being is not upright in him is puffed up. That's the pride. But the righteous one lives by his steadfastness, or his faith, his belief, his emunah. So in closing, we all know and understand what faith is, right? Romans 10, 14 through 18, specifically homing in on verse 17, says, so then belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim, right? We already talked about how the reproofs of correction, these things that we find in his word, are for our correction so that we can be chastised and so that we can become righteous, right? This is what our faith is. But then there's another aspect of faith and belief, which is found in Hebrews chapter 11, which is belief is the substance of what is expected. It's expected because of things that we see in the word, but with that comes things that we don't see, right? The proof of what is not seen. So by this, the elders obtain witness. By belief, we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what is visible. By belief, Abel offered to Elohim a greater sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, Elohim witnessing of his gifts. And through it, having died, he still speaks. By belief, Enoch was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because Elohim had translated him. But without belief, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those that earnestly seek him. All right, so all praises. That's it for today. That's a total place to stop. And basically, the point of it today, and the moral of the story, is just looking at the process that Jacob had to go through, right? it wasn't for his undoing, but it was for his shoring up and for his building up, right? If we be the fathers, then who can stand against us, right? But with that being said, if we be the fathers, we have to learn how to love reproof and the reprover. We have to learn how to love his correction because this is the way of life. If we don't come to love this process and we hate this process and we be fools in the process, then we're not going to be able to get what we need to get out of it. So that's pretty much the essence of today's lesson.
And a part of that is forgiving yourself, right? During those times, that whatever decision that you made was a decision that you made. Now it's time to, after you have repented, forgive yourself, because if Abihu says that he will also forgive us, especially for humble and genuine before him, with the repentance. So forgiving yourself, and then okay, moving forward in that. But yeah, it was told because yeah, it's beautiful. It's really, correction is really a beautiful process, to be honest. Like, it may seem, tough at first, but no, it's actually a really beautiful process, because when you really start to look deeper into the correction process, it's like, okay, thank you, Father, because you're just making me become better. And with all this evilness that we have, that we see, and that, we've been born within sin and all that stuff, it's necessary for us to go through the correction period or correction. So Taught Abiyahu for it being the way of life. Very appreciative. And like I said, the whole goal is to enter the kingdom. So we got work to do.
My praises.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. And as we were speaking about earlier when the lesson began, just that speaking about correction, and then we brought up, Cain. It's interesting that it ends on Cain, because we were talking about Cain in the beginning, receiving that mark, after he did what he did, and my brother's keeper, he's supposed to be. And so now receiving that mark, so that those in the earth, because by all rights and reason he should have been killed. Blood required blood, shedding of blood requires a shedding of blood for remission. And so that was Yahuwah's mercy upon him. Yeah, it seems real tough in the midst of the lesson. It seems real tough. And as you were talking about earlier, it could seem like we are being done unrighteously. It could seem unfair. It could seem like we get taken advantage of. It could seem like all of the above. But at the end of the day, just that process of correction, as you were saying, is a beautiful process, because in it and through it all, if we remember, nah, I should be dead right now. I should be getting so much more for what I did, because I've done so much more for, because it also says in his word, he has not judged us according to our sins. He remembers that we are just man, and that our life is just a breath, it's just a wisp, it's as fading grass. So he does not judge us in fullness, in entirety. Like, he still has mercy on us. So yeah, that process of correction, though it may seem grievous at the time, we have to really consider it's better than the alternative. It is so much better than the alternative.
That's literally the only thing that he's looking for. Like, he didn't he like you said is mindful of our frame. He knows that we are but dust. Like, so knowing that the only thing that he's asking for is for you to be humble and for you to turn that correction and reproof. That's the only thing that he's asking for. He ain't never asked for anything other than that. Is he just never even expected, he would be a fool to have expected it. And we know that can't be said of the Father. Like, he already know. Solomon even said that. We know that people are going to sin. But with that being said, will they repent? If they repent, humble themselves, seek your face, then this is what they got coming. So literally, that's really what the difference maker is. That's not giving nobody a license to transgress, obviously, because for there is no sacrifice for the willful sin. However, we do understand that no, the part of life is reproof and correction. You're gonna be ever learning and ever growing. And as long as you turn at the correction and the reproof when it comes, then you got a total chance at, you know, being where you need to be. This is why he says the righteous shall live by their faith. Um, yeah, all praises. Today was kind of a little bit of a long one, but yeah, we made it through it and we got through the parsha. So hopefully everybody was able to be edified and was able to get something from it at one point or the other. But yeah, all praises.
All praises. So yeah, we definitely hope everybody was able to be edified with this, that you have some takeaways and that you are able to Nasa regal a little bit better, lift up your foot and endure just a little bit better. I hope I use that, somewhat close to the. It's not my first language, y'all. Forgive me. But with that being said, may the Most High keep us all. May He hear us in our time of affliction. May He make us exponentially so much more than we are as it is this day. And may it be for our toe and not for evil. And anybody else, anything else? No? All right, y'all. All praises. Shalom, shalom.